Hello and welcome to Challenge Your Mind, Change the World, the podcast where we dive deep into the art of communication and critical thinking, and how these essential skills can transform our relationships and our futures with our teens. I'm your host, Francesca Hudson, the classic high school teacher, a writer, entrepreneur, and an advocate for meaningful conversations. Each episode, I explore strategies and share insights on how parents can enhance their communication with their children. It's not just about talking, it's about listening, understanding, and fostering an environment where critical thinking thrives. I'm here to equip you with the tools not only for immediate improvements in your family interactions, but also to set up our teens for long-term success in every aspect of their lives. So whether you're on your morning commute or winding down for the evening, join me as we unlock the potential of our conversations to shape a brighter, more thoughtful world. Let's get started. Hello and welcome back to Challenge Your Mind, Change the World. If you're here today, I'm guessing you've had this moment. Your teen is clearly bright. They can talk about ideas. They can understand things when you discuss them at home. And then the exam results come back and they just don't match what you know your teen is capable of. And it's confusing. And honestly, it can be really frustrating because you start wondering, are they not trying? Are they just not good at exams? Or is something else going on here? Today, I want to walk you through something that I see every single day as a teacher. Because here is the truth. Mainly speaking here, underperformance is not about intelligence. It's about a mismatch between how a teen thinks and what exams actually require. And once you understand that shift, everything starts to make a lot more sense. Let's start by gently challenging something. We often say, my teen are smart, but they just don't perform. But here's the problem with that. Smart isn't actually one thing. Your teen might be verbally strong, creative, intuitive, emotionally intelligent, or able to understand ideas quickly. But when it comes to exams, well, exams reward something very specific. They reward structured thinking, clarity under pressure, the ability to organize ideas quickly, and the ability to translate thinking into writing. And those are learned skills, not natural traits. So what often happens is this. A teen can think brilliantly, but cannot show that thinking in exam conditions. And that gap, that's where underperformance lives. Let me show you what this actually looks like in real life. Because when parents say they know it, they just don't show it, they're usually describing one of these bottlenecks. And the first bottleneck is this. It's called the thinking gap. And this is where a teen kind of understands the topic, but hasn't developed clear, structured ideas. So in an exam, they waffle, they repeat themselves, they stay surface level. Even though it sounds like they know it, what's missing is depth and precision of thinking. But what this actually means is when a student lacks this depth and precision of thinking, it's not that they don't understand the topic, it's that their thinking is vague or general or unstructured or not clearly expressed, any one of those things. So on paper, it looks weak, even if there's understanding underneath. Depth is about how developed their idea is, and a student with shallow thinking won't go any deeper in their writing above obvious points, or they repeat the question, or they just describe rather than analyze. A student with depth will explore why something is happening. They will consider meaning, intention, impact, and they'll push the idea further. So, for example, a shallow response would be Shakespeare shows Macbeth is ambitious. An answer with more depth, however, would say Shakespeare presents Macbeth's ambition as dangerous because it overrides his moral judgment and leads to internal conflict. Same idea, but one is surface level, the other shows thinking. Precision is about how exact and controlled their thinking is. So a student without precision will waffle, they'll use vague words. An example of a vague word is they'll use things or they'll use stuff or they'll say this shows. So they lose control of their sentence. And a student with precision will choose very specific words. They'll make a clear, direct point and they'll stay focused. So for example, a low precision sentence would sound like this. This shows he feels bad and stuff and it affects him. High precision would sound like this. This reveals Macbeth's guilt, which begins to destabilize his sense of control. Same idea again, but one sounds unsure, the other sounds like a top student. And this really matters in exams, and this is what a lot of parents don't realize. Examiners are not marking what your team knows, they are marking what your team can clearly show. So if a student has ideas but can't develop them, that's low depth. If they have ideas but can't express them clearly, that's low precision, and they drop marks fast. So you'll see paragraphs that go nowhere, or repeated ideas phrased slightly differently, or overly long sentences that lose meaning, or basic vocabulary doing all the work. And parents say, but they know this, and they do. They just haven't got the tools to shape that thinking into something examinable. So I think the key is strong students don't just have ideas, they know how to build and express them clearly. That's a skill, not a personality trait, not intelligence, it's not effort. It's not what your team thinks, it's how clearly they can show it. Okay, so the second bottleneck is called the planning paralysis. And this one is huge. Your teen sits there thinking, I don't know where to start. And even if they do know the content, because they've never been taught how to quickly plan an answer and how to organise ideas under time pressure. So instead of writing, they freeze, they overthink, they lose time, and the whole answer unravels before it even begins. So let's slow this idea down, right down for a moment. I want you to imagine your teen is sitting in an exam, they read the question, and then their brain goes, okay, what do I say? What's the right answer? Where do I even start? What if I do it wrong? And instead of clarity, they get mental noise in their mind, competing ideas in their brain, no clear entry point. The key problem is they don't have a starting system. High-performing students don't just start writing. They have an internal process like break down the question, choose a clear angle, map 2 to 3 ideas, then begin. But most teens have never been taught this process explicitly. So their brain tries to do everything at once, understand the question, come up with ideas, structure the answer, write sentences, and that creates overload. So this shows up as staring at the page for 5 to 10 minutes, writing one sentence and then crossing it out, constantly restarting, asking, is this right? Running out of time later. And parents think they just didn't manage their time, but actually they never got started properly in the first place. This is the cycle that is happening in their head, the overthinking loop. It goes like this. I need to get this right. I don't know the best way to start. What if this is wrong? Then they hesitate. Then they lose time. Pressure increases. Thinking gets worse. And now they're stuck. And this is why knowing the content doesn't fix this. You can know the content and still freeze, because the problem isn't memory, it's organisation under pressure, and that's a completely different skill. Students without a plan, they start writing immediately, and the example could be Macbeth is shown as ambitious and this leads to bad things and he changes. They ramble, lose direction, repeat ideas, panic halfway through. Now, a student with a plan, even taking 30 seconds at the start of the test to jot down a plan, just 30 seconds. Let's use the Macbeth example. So they're sitting there in an English exam, they're going to write an essay on Macbeth. They might not note down ambition means overrides morality. Influence of Lady Macbeth. Consequences equals guilt and paranoia. Right? That's their quick plan. And then they write, Shakespeare presents Macbeth's ambition as a destructive force that overrides his moral judgment. Now, that's clear, controlled, high scoring. The time myth of all of this is parents often say they don't have time to plan in exams, but actually they don't have time not to plan, because without a plan, they waste time starting, they lose time mid-answer, they rush the ending. A 30-second plan saves minutes later. Confident writers don't start faster, they start clearer. Teens need a repeatable starting routine, not I'll just figure it out later, but I always start like this. I always start with a plan. And a simple planning structure doesn't mean it's a full essay, just literally 2 to 3 bullet points with a clear main idea, because this will reduce decision making. And it's the decision fatigue which freezes teens to get started with their writing. So they shift from, instead of saying, what should I write, to I'll follow the structure. So if your teen freezes at the start of an exam, it's not because they don't know anything, it's because no one has shown them how to begin. Okay, and the third bottleneck is the cognitive overload problem. Now, what is this? This is the hidden pressure cooker of exams. And for a lot of teens, especially neurodiverse teens, this is the exact moment where everything falls apart. Not because they don't understand, but because their brain is trying to do too much too fast. Let's break this down in real terms. Your teen reads an exam question, and instantly their brain has to juggle, what is this question asking me? What do I remember about this topic? What examples should I use? How do I structure this? How do I start the sentence? Am I running out of time? What if this is wrong? Whew, now that is not one task. That is 6 to 8 simultaneous tasks. The key problem is that their working memory is overloaded. And think of it this way, the brain has limited holding space for thinking. It's like a desk. If there are too many things on the desk, things start falling off. So in an exam, an idea gets dropped, the structure gets lost, the sentence falls apart, the question focus disappears, and the student ends up with a messy, incomplete answer. So what overload looks like in real life gets completely misread all the time, because it looks like stopping in mid-sentence, forgetting what they were saying, jumping between ideas, writing something simple just to move on, leaving answers unfinished, rushing the last paragraph. And parents think they need to focus more, but actually they are already over-focusing on too many things at once. It brings about a collapse point. Every student has a point where their brain hits overload. Before that point, they're thinking clearly. After that point, everything simplifies or breaks down. So you'll often see the first paragraph is really strong, the second is okay, the third is really rushed or basic. Now that's not laziness, that's cognitive fatigue and overload. And this hits neurodivergent teens harder because neurodivergent brains often process more information at once. They take longer to organise thoughts. They experience stronger overwhelm signals and they have reduced working memory capacity. So the same exam demands feels like double the load, which is why these teens often understand deeply but produce far less on paper. Can you imagine? They're thinking, okay, ambition, Lady Macbeth, quote, how do I say this? Wait, what was the question again? I'm running out of time. And you can see how this comes out on paper is Macbeth is ambitious and this leads to bad things. The gap, that's overload. Your teen doesn't need to think harder, they need to think with less strain. Because the solution is not try harder, it's reduce the thinking load. We want to encourage our teens to externalize their thinking, get the ideas out of their head and onto paper quickly by using bullet points, bullet plans, visual maps, sentence starters. This will free up mental space. They could also use structure as a shortcut. So instead of thinking, what should I say? They think, okay, I'm going to follow the structure. They do a plan first. They have it all arrowed out, bullet pointed out, and they just follow the structure. And this will remove decision making. Because when things become automatic, sentence structures, paragraph flow, how to start, the brain has more space for actual thinking. How do we bring in more structure? So we've outlined the 3 bottlenecks. And this is the moment I really want you to take away from today. Your teen does not need to become smarter. They need to become more structured in how they think and respond. Because high-performing students are not necessarily more intelligent. They are just more organised, more strategic, and more practiced in exam-style thinking. Because they've learned how to break questions down, how to plan quickly, how to build answers step by step. And that is teachable for every type of learner. It is possible for every type of learner. So what can you actually do as a parent at home listening to this? Let's make this really practical. The first thing is you can shift the focus from study more to think better. So instead of saying, have you revised? You could try, can you explain your idea clearly in one sentence? Or what would your main argument be? Because we want to be really clear in our because clarity beats quantity every time. The second thing we can do to support our teens is to help them build planning into everything. So before your teen writes anything, you could ask, what's your plan? Even just 3 bullet points or 3 key ideas. This will reduce overwhelm instantly. And the third way is we could teach them how to practice under low pressure. Because most teens only practice under high pressure or timed conditions, but they actually need slow, scaffolded practice first, where they can build confidence, they can test structure, they can make mistakes safely. So we need to look at ways that we can give them those low pressure situations. And I'll get to that in a moment of how we can do that. The fourth way is to reduce the thinking load. This is where frameworks change everything. When a teen has sentence starters, structure templates, and clear systems, they don't have to figure everything out from scratch. And then suddenly their real thinking can actually start to come through. So if this sounds like your teen, I want to say this really clearly. There is nothing wrong with them. They are not lazy. They are not incapable. They are not just bad at exams. They've simply never been taught how to translate their thinking into exam success. And once they learn that, everything can shift, often quite quickly. So before we finish, I want to show you what this actually looks like when all these pieces come together. Because everything we've talked about today, the planning paralysis, the cognitive overload, the gap between what your teen knows and what they actually show, none of that is fixed by just trying harder. It's fixed by having a system, which we touched on briefly just before. A clear, step-by-step way of learning how to remember information, how to organise thinking, how to plan under pressure, and how to actually perform in an exam setting. And this is exactly why I created my exam-ready system, because I kept seeing the same pattern again and again. Bright, capable teens who were working hard, but were missing the process behind exam success. So inside Exam Ready, we don't just revise content, we build the skills behind performance. We cover everything from A to Z. This is your complete A to Z exam study system. How memory actually works, so they're not just rereading and hoping it sticks. How to reduce overwhelm using simple scaffolds. How to break down questions quickly and confidently. How to plan answers without freezing. How to use visual notes and systems that actually make information stick. And how to practice in a way that builds confidence before pressure is applied. There is something in there for every different type of learner. Because when a teen has a clear way to start, a structure to follow, and tools that reduce the thinking load, everything changes. They stop second guessing, they stop freezing, they stop leaving things unfinished. And you start to see clearer answers, stronger ideas, and results that actually reflect what they're capable of. And honestly, that's the moment parents always say, this finally makes sense. So if you've been listening today and thinking, this is exactly what my teen struggles with, then this is exactly the kind of support Exam Ready is designed to provide. I will link that in the show notes, along with a couple of other support resources that I know you will find really valuable to use at home. Thank you so much for being here today. If this episode resonated, I'd love for you to share it with another parent who might need to hear this. And as always, we're not just helping teens pass exams. We're helping them understand how their brain works and how to use it with confidence. I'll see you in the next episode. Bye for now. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of Challenge Your Mind, Change the World. I hope you found our discussion enriching and that you're walking away with new ideas to enhance communication and critical thinking within your own family. If you enjoyed this episode and are finding value in our conversations, please take a moment to rate us on your favourite podcast platform. Your feedback not only supports us, but also helps other parents discover the tools they need to foster stronger relationships and critical thinking skills with their teens. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode, and share this with someone who you think could benefit from our today's topic. I'm Francesca Hudson, and I look forward to joining you again next time as we continue to challenge our minds and change the world. Until then, keep thinking critically and communicating effectively.